Europe. It's a continent completely renowned for its temperate climates, its historic stone-paved cities, and, well, those mild, welcoming summers. But beneath that postcard image, a dramatic, frankly terrifying shift is taking place. The continent is baking. It's literally heating up faster than anywhere else on Earth, and the machinery of its weather systems is fundamentally breaking down. We're going to treat this like the absolute climate mystery it is. We'll analyze the data, the hidden atmospheric mechanisms, and unravel exactly why Europe's summers are turning so deadly.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this emergency, we have to look at the human toll. In just a single recent year, extreme heat claimed nearly 63,000 lives across Europe. 63,000. That is just a staggering, heartbreaking number. So this isn't just a story about uncomfortable weather anymore, or a few broken temperature records. This is a lethal, fast-moving crisis overwhelming entire nations. And the big question we have to answer as investigators today is, why?
Section 1. The fastest warming continent. Okay, let's dive into this, because the data paints a picture of a continent transforming right before our eyes. When you map out the temperature anomalies for 2025, it's wild. Almost the entire continent is drenched in these deep reds, meaning temperatures were drastically above the historical average. 2025 didn't just feel a little bit warmer, it was officially the warmest year on record for Europe. From the Mediterranean seas stretching all the way up into the Arctic Circle, the heat was completely inescapable. It just covered the continent like this heavy, suffocating blanket. And here's the statistic that honestly has climate scientists on high alert. Since the 1980s, Europe has been warming at more than twice the global average. Let that sink in for a second. While the whole world is undeniably getting hotter, Europe is warming at double the speed of the rest of the planet. It's the fastest warming continent on Earth. To understand this accelerated timeline, we really have to pull back the curtain on the sky itself.
Section 2. Anatomy of a heat wave. Let's move to the mechanics and break down the complex meteorological phenomena trapping all this extreme heat over the continent. The immediate culprit here is something called an omega block. The atmosphere literally forms the shape of the Greek letter omega, trapping a massive high-pressure system right between two low-pressure ones. It acts just like an invisible heat dome. The air inside sinks, it compresses, and it rapidly warms up. And with that high pressure blocking out any rain or clouds, the heat simply has absolutely nowhere to escape. Now, what's really interesting about this is the discovery of the double jet state. Normally, the jet stream, which is this fast-flowing river of air high up in the atmosphere, brings cooling Atlantic storms right over Europe. But increasingly, this jet stream is splitting into two distinct branches over Eurasia. When this happens, all those cooling weather systems get diverted way far to the north. Researchers have found that these double jet events are actually lasting longer and longer, and they explain almost 100% of the upward trend in intense heat waves, specifically over Western Europe. It's basically a giant atmospheric traffic jam. And this atmospheric traffic jam has totally unprecedented consequences. Just think about the data from subarctic Fennoscandia back in July 2025. Because an omega block parked itself directly over northern Europe, this region experienced a continuous 21-day heat wave. We're talking about temperatures hitting 30 degrees Celsius right on the edge and even inside the Arctic Circle. A region that usually sees maybe 1 or 2 days of strong heat stress a year just baked for 3 straight weeks. Absolutely incredible.
Section 3. The climate change multipliers. The atmospheric machinery is definitely changing. But to grasp the sheer speed of this crisis, we have to look at the hidden multipliers driving this beyond just greenhouse gases. One of the most fascinating and kind of counterintuitive drivers is the irony of clean air. Back in the 1980s, Europe implemented strict, highly successful air quality regulations to clear up smog and reduce pollution. But here's the catch. Pollution aerosols actually act as a reflective shield, bouncing solar radiation back into space. So as the air got cleaner and aerosol concentrations plummeted, way more direct sunlight was allowed to reach the Earth's surface. By doing the absolutely right thing for our lungs, we accidentally removed a chemical shield that was masking the true severity of global warming. And it's a massive compounding puzzle. Rising temperatures melt the snow earlier, which lowers the Earth's reflectivity, so it absorbs even more heat. Combine that with Arctic amplification, rapidly warming the north, and the urban heat island effect, where Europe's concrete cities just radiate heat all night long, well, it's a perfect storm. They're all acting together to push the thermometer higher. Section 4. Europe's unique vulnerabilities. But weather and physics only tell half the story here. We really have to investigate the human element.
and why the European continent is uniquely unequipped for this new reality.
Think about classic European architecture for a second. For centuries, homes from Paris to Prague were brilliantly designed for one primary purpose: surviving freezing, bitter winters. We're talking thick walls designed to retain heat, small windows to prevent drafts, and virtually zero centralized air conditioning. But in our new climate reality, these historical design triumphs have basically become deadly traps. When extreme heat hits, these buildings act like ovens, baking the people inside. Combine that with Europe's super long summer daylight hours, and the night just doesn't last long enough to cool the buildings down before the sun rises and starts the whole baking process all over again.
And this brilliantly illustrates the most critical human vulnerability of them all: demographics. Europe is aging rapidly. The trend in the working-age population is completely shifting. It dropped from 67% in 2010 down to 63% in 2025, and it's projected to plummet to just 54% by the year 2100. A shrinking workforce means fewer people to manage emergencies, build new infrastructure, or care for the sick. But more importantly, it means an enormous, growing population of elderly citizens, which is the exact demographic most physiologically vulnerable to heat stroke and dehydration.
When you combine that fragile demographic with the extreme temperature data, the threat becomes crystal clear. In 2025, 41% of Europe experienced way more days than average of at least strong heat stress, meaning feels like temperatures of 32 degrees Celsius or higher. When you overlay that level of severe heat stress onto a continent with the oldest population on the globe, living in buildings specifically designed to trap heat, you don't just have a weather event anymore. You have a recipe for mass casualties.
Section 5. Systems under severe strain. Because it isn't just the human body failing under this pressure, it's the very bedrock of modern society. We are witnessing a cascading breakdown of infrastructure. Our power grids are practically at the brink. As electricity demand spikes by, say, 7.5% from everyone turning on their AC at once, the supply literally chokes. Coal and nuclear plants need massive amounts of river water just to cool their reactors, but heat waves cause droughts, right? So rivers run dry, power plants overheat and have to power down, and fuel barges literally get stuck in the mud. The whole system basically turns on itself.
Even the economy is directly in the crosshairs, particularly Europe's crown jewel, tourism. 42% of all global tourists visit Europe. We are talking about 130 million people pouring into the continent in just 3 summer months. But honestly, how many people will continue to book flights to Rome, Athens, or Madrid when stepping outside feels like walking into a blast furnace? This new extreme climate threatens to severely damage an absolute cornerstone of the European economy.
Which brings us to the defining question of our investigation. The data is clear, the physics are established, and the impacts are being felt right now. But can a continent so steeped in history pivot fast enough to survive this new normal?
Section 6. Adapting to new realities. Let's look at how governments and institutions are scrambling to catch up to a climate that's moving much faster than anyone anticipated.
The World Health Organization has made it explicitly clear: extreme heat deaths are largely preventable. It's essentially an infrastructure and planning failure. So, the WHO is aggressively pushing for comprehensive heat health action plans. This means creating unified systems across health and non-health sectors. It means establishing clear, data-driven early warning triggers, opening public cooling centers, modifying work hours, and having robust community systems in place to check on the elderly. It's all about treating a heat wave with the exact same organized, militant preparedness as you would a hurricane. So the crucial point here is captured perfectly in a warning from the Oxford Environmental Change Institute. They noted that the traditional pattern of peak electricity demand in Europe, which has always been in the freezing winters, could very soon shift permanently to the summer. That requires a total, top-to-bottom rethink of how the grid is managed, how cities are built, and really how European society functions on a day-to-day basis. We are quite literally witnessing the forced redesign of an entire continent. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more explainers exploring history, science, engineering, current affairs, and how our world works, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new documentary. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Do you think Europe can successfully adapt to rising temperatures, or are extreme heat waves becoming the new normal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next documentary.